Hey, good evening. I'll give it just a couple of seconds for folks to join. Let's give it another minute or so. Drink my coffee. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My wife was going to teach tonight, talk for a little bit tonight, but she realized that she's on call. She's a nurse, so she is a home health nurse. She goes out to people's homes, so she could possibly get called. So instead of being interrupted potentially by her phone, we decided that I would go ahead and speak tonight. We talked about talking about parenting tonight, but I felt led today to talk about something else. And what I want to talk about tonight is being transformed. I believe that God is using this opportunity right now in our country, in the world, but in our country, in our towns, and in us individually to transform us, to take something that may need to be taken and made new again inside of us. And I just think that it's really important that we are aware of that and that we yield ourselves to that. I believe that Jesus is transforming people's lives who truly desire to serve Him. So that's the first thing we have to ask ourselves. Do we really, truly desire to serve Him? Is He truly our King? Is He truly the one that we want to please? Because if we want to please Him, then we'll allow the transformation process to happen. Because sometimes that transformation process requires us to, the Bible says, to die to ourselves, to relinquish some things that we do, some ways that we act. And I believe that one way that Jesus does this is He uses situations in our life to bring transformation. And particularly the situation that we're in right now, He's using this, I believe, to bring transformation to us. And someone once told me that when something happens to us adverse, that possibly it could be Jesus doing a spirit check inside of us. So if somebody cuts us off and somebody does something that we don't like, and maybe that rises up inside of us, that initial reaction to get vengeance towards someone, that maybe God's just doing a little spirit check to see how we're going to act and how we're going to respond in those situations. Because our response is important. What we do is very important. Some people think that it doesn't matter what others think of them. Some people think that it only matters what Jesus thinks about them. And so the question is, which one of these are right? Which one of these are right? Does it matter what other people think about us, or does it matter what Jesus thinks about us? And the answer is not simple. So let's look and see what the Bible has to say about this. Jesus warned us in Luke chapter 26, 6 and verse 26. He said, "Woe to you when all men speak well of you." Recently, Renee, we're moving to Lebanon, and we've sold our house twice already. The first people backed out of buying it, and Renee said, "I feel like we're just running into problems." And I said, "Well, that just shows that this is Jesus that's working, because if everything was just selling smoothly, then maybe we have to question." Because the adversary loves to come in and stir up problems during times like this. And we just have to make sure that we're watching and guarding our hearts. Jesus said, "Woe to you when all men speak well of you." So when everybody's speaking well of you, then maybe we need to say, hold on, what's going on here? Paul said in Galatians chapter 1 and verse 10, he says, "Or do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I still please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ." Paul's saying, if I just sought to please men all the time, I wouldn't be a bondservant of Jesus Christ. Now, you have to understand who Paul was writing to in this time and the men that he used to try to please that were anti-Christian. Paul was taking people, Christians, actually killing them. He was watching when Stephen was stoned in the book of Acts. And Paul said, if I'm seeking after to please men, how am I going to be able to please God? He also said in 1 Thessalonians 2 and 4, he says, but as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, even so we speak, not as pleasing men, but God who tests our hearts. You see, when we are being transformed, we have to ask ourselves the question, am I a man pleaser or am I a God pleaser? 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 20 through 21 says, avoiding this, that anyone should blame us. Now check this out. Let me go back and read in Proverbs 22:1 first. But the Bible also says, now we talked about Paul and the warning by Jesus as far as trying to please men, but the Bible also says in Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 1, it says, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. I used to tell my kids all the time, especially my son, I'll say, son, people are going to know you. You're building a name for yourself. As we walk through life, we're building a name for yourself. So when someone says Jamie Halsey, they automatically think of something in their mind. And it's very important that we build a good name for ourselves. That people around us, when they think about us, they think good things. They think godly things about us. It says a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and verses 20 through 21 says, avoiding this, that anyone should blame us in the lavish gift which is administered by us, proving honorable things, not only in the sight of the Lord, but also in the sight of men. So on one hand, we have these scriptures that say we're to please God and not man. And on the other hand, we have these scriptures that say it's important what men think about us. Paul wrote in the book of Romans, in Romans chapter 15 and verse 1-2, it says, we then who are strong ought to bear with the scruples of the weak, and not to please ourselves. Let each of us please his neighbor for his good, leading to edification. That the things we do should be pleasing to our neighbor for the purpose of edification, for good. Paul also, when he was teaching Timothy and saying, you know what, you need to find leaders in the church in 1 Timothy chapter 3, he said one of the things that you need to look for is that they're blameless. That no one can place unjustified blame on them. So as Jesus transforms us, how do we balance these two things? How do we balance pleasing Jesus and pleasing men? Because each one is very important. So the answer is that when we live our lives, we allow Jesus to transform us, and others benefit from this. I want to say that one more time. It is important how we live our lives and allow Jesus to transform us. And as he transforms us, others benefit from that transformation. I said the other day in one of my Facebook Live is that when Jesus changed me, he changed me from the inside out. He changed me to become a new creation. He changed the way that I act. He changed the way that I talk. He changed who I hung around, who I decided to be my friends. Jesus changed that. I didn't hang around the people that I used to hang around. God gave me new people to influence me in my life. He changed the decisions that I make. He changed me at the core. He changed me of how I conduct myself on a daily basis. See, when Jesus transforms us, He's changing us on the inside, and it causes us to act differently and to think differently. You know, unfortunately, we'll have people around us that don't like that. They don't like to see the transformation that's happening in your life or in my life. I have a very close friend that his mom told him he used to party with her and do drugs and drink and all these things. And when Jesus began to transform him, his mom looked at him one day and said, "I like the old you better that used to go out and do drugs and drink with me." You see, not everyone's going to like the transformation process that's happening in you. But the important thing is that our goal is to please Jesus and allow Him to lead us and to change our lives. Paul said in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 19, he says, "For I know this," he said, "For I know that this will turn out for my deliverance through your prayer and the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but with all boldness as also, so now also Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death." He said, it's so important that Jesus Christ is magnified through me. So the true question is not what people think of me. Here is the true question. It's how people see Jesus through me. It's not what other people think of me. The question is, am I truly reflecting Jesus? Do they truly see the characteristics of Jesus Christ coming from me? You see, some people will say taking the Lord's name in vain is a word. And unfortunately, even saying that, it causes these words to pop up in our mind. And I don't intend to do that, but they use a word or a phrase as you just took the Lord's name in vain. And see, that's not it at all. Taking the Lord's name in vain is taking upon Him, is being washed and being renewed by repentance and being baptized in His name and being filled with His Spirit, and then not letting your life reflect that to all those people around us. You see, every day the decisions that we make and the actions that we act out, every day when we do not reflect the light of Jesus Christ to the people around us, we're taking the Lord's name in vain. We're not honoring Him by the way that we act. That's the reason no one's perfect, and we mess up. I mess up. I say things that I shouldn't, and I do things that I shouldn't. But my point is that what are we known by? When someone thinks of Jamie Halsey, what do they think? When they think of you, what do they think? Do they think of someone that loves Jesus with all their heart and seeking after Him every single day and is shining forth His glory into this earth? Because if not, we have to ask ourselves the question, are we taking the Lord's name in vain? Are we pleasing God, or are we pleasing men? And as I said, the true question is, that's not the question at all. The true question is am I pleasing Jesus, and then people see Him through me? And they see Jesus by the way we act, by the way we react to things, by the way we talk, by how we live, by how we conduct ourselves. People see Jesus by the things I say every single day and how I live my life. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, does my life truly reflect Jesus Christ? Am I truly being transformed by Him? Am I making decisions based upon what's important to Him? Paul said it this way in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 20. He says, "Now then, we are ambassadors for Christ." An ambassador, when they go to another country, if there's an ambassador, an American ambassador in one of the countries in Africa, they represent all that America is to that country. Now, if they go to that country and they just act any old way they can, and in a lot of ways they're immune to the law. They have immunity to the local laws that are there. But if they go there and they act inappropriately, are they truly representing America? If an ambassador from another country comes here and they act a certain way that is not befitting of their country, are they truly representing that country? Paul said, in a very simplistic way, he said, we are ambassadors of Christ. And he goes on to say, as though God were pleading through us, we implore you on Christ's behalf to be reconciled to God. He's saying, I am an ambassador of Christ, and that through me, through my actions, through the way you see me live, it's as though God was pleading through us that we implore you on Christ's behalf. See, that is a very heavy statement that Paul made. He said that we are acting on Christ's behalf in this world to be reconciled to God. So we have to give thought to this question. Is Jesus honored by the way people think of us? Would someone be willing to change their life based upon the Jesus that they see in you or in me? Would someone be willing, as we talked about the other day, with Judas and Peter on Sunday, would someone be willing to lay down their nets? Would they be willing to change their life based upon what you're telling them about Jesus Christ? Because they see him in you. You see, that's being reconciled to God. Is when those questions come up to us right in our face, and I look at it as though I'm talking to a mirror. If I have a mirror and I'm staring at it, and I say, Jamie, would people be willing to change their life based upon what they know about you? Based upon how you act and the things that you do? Would they be willing to listen to you about the things of God? And that's not just a question I need to ask myself. That's a question we need to ask ourselves. Are we truly being reconciled to God? Are we truly being transformed into his image? See, this is the true question. So my answer is this. Do we need to be concerned about pleasing Jesus? Or do we need to be concerned about pleasing those around us? And the answer is yes. The answer is simple. It's yes. Because as we please Jesus, we'll please those around us. But maybe not all of those around us. Because Jesus warned the disciples. He said, there are going to be those that are going to hate you for my name's sake. I've experienced that in my life. I've had people that I love speak negatively about me because of my decisions that I've made to serve Christ. But I want to tell you, I will always choose what Jesus thinks, because I know that as I allow him to change my life, others around will see Jesus through me. And it's important that I'm allowing Jesus to change me so that they can see him reflected inside of me. So here's the question. Here's the answer to the question, is how do we do this? And it's wrapped up in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 through 2. Paul told the Romans, he said, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God. He's saying, I beseech you, I'm asking you in a very strong way, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. And he says this is your reasonable service. You have to remember, these are people that the church started in the book of Acts. These people have already followed the plan of salvation, and Paul's writing a letter back to them, and he's saying, I beseech you, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service, and do not, this is it, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, the way that you think, the actions that you take. Let your mind be transformed. And he goes on to say that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. You see, I said the other day, God's not looking for robots. Here's our will, here's God's will. And when God's will begins to move, we allow our will to intertwine within that. The problem is when they start hitting each other. Paul said, I beseech you by the renewing of your mind, is that when you see the things of God and you see your life hitting against it, that we change the way we think. The Bible calls this repentance. We change the way we think and we allow our will and God's will to line up with each other. And when that happens, I'm telling you, transformation follows. You can transplant just about anything and everything on your body. But I did a Google search yesterday, and as of yesterday, there has never been a successful brain transplant. There's never been a successful brain transplant. See, serving Jesus requires a renewing of our mind. The only brain transplant that we can have is by renewing our mind and allowing the Spirit of God to lead us and change the way we think. Paul said that is, we become a new creation when we're baptized in His name and filled with His Spirit. That old things have passed away and that all things are made new. You see, if we want to truly, truly, truly please God and man, it starts with Jesus Christ and it flows into our relationship with others. And this can only happen as we begin to follow Him and allow His light to shine forth in this world. God bless you all. If you'd like to go to our website, it's www.polpa.org. We have some information on there. If you ever have any questions, you can message me on Facebook, Renee and I. You can text me. You can call me. I'm open to any questions or any conversation, any discussion. And also, if you would, please share this. It's far more effective when you share it. I've learned that. I haven't been on Facebook too long, but I have learned that when you share, the message gets out there. And my goal is that this message touches as many people as it possibly can. God bless you all. Have a great night.